Okay. All right. So we're back with Laura Brand on Serial Killer Whisperer. It's been a few weeks. Laura has been jamming on her book, and
Hmm.
uh, that should be hopefully coming out within the year, I guess.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
what they said? The release date?
yeah. I have to hand it in on May 1st, so
Mm-hmm.
shortly after that, probably.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's all good.
I've been like revamping the whole thing, so it'll be yeah.
So how is it going? How's the whole process going? I mean, are you reliving a lot of these moments?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Listening back to all the interviews and reliving, from the first interview with him. And then, all of his details of the homicides over again, it feels like.
Yeah. Because the book about, for anybody who has been listening, it's about, it's your whole journey with Lawrence Bittaker,
Hmm.
because he was basically your first.
Yeah.
And we were just talking off, the podcast about how he was surprised why anybody would want to hear about him. To tell me a little about what that conversation was like.
Yeah. Well, I had just called a witness who I've been trying to get on to the podcast, and he was one of the teenagers that hung out with Bittaker and Norris. And he has some crazy stories. And I had said to him, I go, "Will you come on?" He said, "Of course." But I don't understand why people would want to hear these stories. And I was like, there's actually, a huge following who's very interested in, all the witness testimony with Bittaker. Specifically, we've had on Dina and Tina and Kristen, who was a survivor. We've had on, friends of Lynette and even Norris's cousin. And there's a mass appeal who want to hear these stories from these voices who have never really spoken about the case. And specifically in the book too, I had to track down over 250 witnesses on the case, and re-interview them, 40 years later after everything has occurred. And especially, the teenagers back then when they're being interviewed by law enforcement, I mean, they were scared. They didn't want to talk. They didn't want to, have to go into a trial and, get on the stand and testify. So a lot of them didn't even tell, investigators their real story of what happened with Bittaker and Norris too.
What's that like? I mean, we've done it in our true crime documentaries, with victims' families and stuff like that many years after, but you're doing much more of a deep dive than what we get to do on these documentaries, because it's only a little slice, but you spend a lot of time with these people, especially when you're doing research for your book. What I mean, what's it like when you call someone out of the blue like that? I mean, I know we've had that experience, but like for you, it's a little bit different because it's like victims, it's crazy, and anything
Yeah.
associated with a serial killer, it just takes it up a notch. So, what is some of their responses, and
Oh
how do
my
you
God.
do it?
I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, you know what it's like when you're calling somebody out of the blue connected to a serial killing case. I mean, it's almost like you feel like a hurricane coming into their life or back into their life, um, which is, jarring for you to even want to make that call to them, because it's like, are you, you do this because you want to help, but are you hurting more, going back and looking into these cases? And with Bittaker and Norris specifically, with Cindy and Andrea still missing, I mean, I had to, go back and dive into this. And, I found about the Knott's Berry Farm and Gretchen. So, there's all these other victims out there. So I had to rip off these Band-Aids, and, got a lot of questions of like, why dig back in? And it's like, well, there's these girls that are still up in the mountains that have never been found. And then you have the unknown victims. So I have to look back into this, especially after he gave me the locations. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Not go back into it. Um, but yeah, anytime you have to call the witness, I mean, it's hard. I mean, you've had that experience and you don't want to bring up, past trauma with them. But, I've had,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
no, I'm not as good. Cindy's way better at it than I am. It's
Mhm.
like, it's hard. I mean, I've done it, but I don't like doing it. Cindy seems to have a natural knack. You seem to have a natural knack. I think it's like female empathy that just is much stronger.
Mhm.
To me, it's like it's hard to articulate,
Right.
that when you're trying to get them to reveal stuff to you so you can learn. and kind of, find out what they were going through and all that stuff. But the other question I had for you about you working on this book and really doing, I mean, because you've been, that's why you haven't been on the podcast, because you've been racing to get all this information done because you have a deadline.
Yeah.
But have what have you learned by going over all this information again and kind of putting it together in a cohesive fashion with a narrative that, have you learned anything new by going over your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's revelations anytime you're going over, the notes or listening back to the interviews with Bittaker. Um, even the witnesses too, when I'm going over the notes or listening back. I think one of the biggest revelations I've told you and Cindy about is when I talked to Bittaker's first girlfriend, the one he always talks about with the rejection. And he had brought her up to San Gabriel Mountain, which he never revealed to me that he actually brought her
Hmm.
up there on dates. And I mean, that's telling in of itself. I mean, he's bringing, his first girlfriend the same place where he later brings the victims, of these crimes. And, when I did the profile with Alan Pass, he said these crimes with Bittaker was, the majority of it was the anger at his mother and this first girlfriend he had too. And Norris, you know, when I look at his past, he's almost even more of an enigma to me because, he had such a good upbringing. When I spoke to his sister and I've spoken to his cousin, they had like a picturesque kind of background in Colorado. I mean, they were going to the roller rink every weekend, two family home. The only thing he ever reported to me was, his grandparents would degrade his mother in front of him, which is pretty much nothing. And even with Bittaker, I mean, you look at his background, there was neglect, but that was it. You expect to see more abuse, more sexual abuse or physical abuse or something with two, extremely sexual sadists, even in their own right. And
Hmm.
nothing, looking back at both of them.
That's crazy. It's really
Mhm.
nuts. Now, and then you have to relive it over and over again, just
Yeah.
by your own words and your own research.
Yeah.
Do you feel like I mean, when you're going over your research, you're like, I got it all? Or are you like, I wish I got it, there's always that second guessing, like,
There's
I wish I
always
would
that.
have had more of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you feel that way with Ridgway when you were, like, working very closely with him. I mean, there's always that you look back at your notes and you're like, "Oh, I wish I had just hit harder with that question," or, "I wish I had pushed more," or, "Oh my god, I should have asked that," looking back. You always had that.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time when you're talking, for me, when I first started talking to these serial killers, it was like, I was just, sometimes you get a little tunnel vision because because you're actually, they're responding to you.
Right.
And then after you get over that hump of like, all right, I'm talking to a vicious animal,
Right.
and you have to focus on, all right, what do I want to get out of this conversation? What do I want to learn from this conversation? What do I want people to learn from this conversation? Then it gets more into a flow, but it never, you know, it never really gets easy.
No.
I mean,
I
you
mean,
get,
no.
but I mean, for you, I mean, you do it on such a large scale. I
Right.
mean, you deal, it's like, and it's almost like they say the 10,000 rule. You ever read that book about the 10,000 rule?
No.
Where if you do anything for more than 10,000 hours, you become an expert,
Yeah. Well, I'm
no
waiting.
matter what it is, whether it's swinging a golf club, talking to serial killers. I
Right.
mean, so, and I think that your muscle memory for serial killers is at the pro level, you
Yeah.
know, and so it's a unique talent to have, but it's not like you were born with it. It just you earned it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, each one is so different too. Each one is a new experience. When you sit down with them, every single one is so uniquely different in their own way.
Hmm.
Even if they're typed the same way, I mean, and they have the same methodology or maybe the same victimology. I mean, you sit down with one, each one is a different experience. Which I mean, you saw David Carpenter when you sat down with him with me. And
Yeah.
you look at him and then you look at serial killer X versus,
Yeah.
Ford. I mean, they're also uniquely different in their own right.
Yeah. I mean, to me, when I saw David Carpenter, I felt like I was talking to a homeless guy. It's like when you talk to a homeless guy in script, because it's like
Right.
his conversations are just kind of like a zigzag, kind
Mhm.
of all over the place. And then when we talk to um, what's his Ford is he's pretty articulate
Yeah,
and thoughtful. And obviously he was the only one of the few serial killers who actually turned himself in.
right.
And so obviously there's a lot of internal stuff going on there where he has regret and remorse, and then you have serial killer X, which is just he's shot out of a cannon. He's like
Right.
he's loud and proud. He has no remorse. He enjoys the insanity of his insanity.
He really does.
He
Yeah.
really relishes it. And part of me thinks a little bit of it's a little bravado and it's a little bit of an act. But I
Yeah.
think I wouldn't want to test that.
No, I wouldn't
You
either.
know,
I
you know.
really do believe if he got back out, he would be right back at it.
Yeah,
He really
yeah.
would.
Have you heard from him lately?
Yeah, actually. Actually, he might even call if I what time is it? He usually calls very late.
And
Um,
well, it's 8:25 here on the West Coast.
mhm.
But we also, I mean, you're waiting for that call from that other
Other
the kid from the or who was a kid at the Scott
yeah,
Motel. But so we never really got a chance to finish some of the other traits.
right.
So why don't we talk a little bit, give you an opportunity to kind of talk about the traits of silicate. I don't even know where we left off. It's been like
I
a
know
few
it's
weeks.
been a while.
So
Yeah, let me get my notes.
I
So
mean,
we
unless you have something else you want to talk about that, I mean, because it's
oh,
been
I
so much. Is there
some
anything updates like
oh,
from?
I actually just got an update earlier today. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say it, but I guess we'll break it here. Um, Another victim of Ings and Lake has been identified.
Really?
Yeah,
In addition to the one that was a few months ago
correct.
in the
Correct.
same area?
Yes. This is some of the bones that were recovered that they're testing.
Wow.
Yes. So it's the mother, the neighbor, Brenda O'Connor. Um, she's been identified with some of the remains. So she is now the second.
Which neighbor was that from the murder house?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where?
We went
And
to
yeah, I know. Where and what? How close of a neighbor was it in the house?
one directly next door.
The one where we walked up and we got and that people that were in there and they told us they were asking us if we should be there in that house.
That one. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had just moved in, and it was Brenda, who was the mother. They had a young child, a baby,
Now I remember.
and a husband, and they actually were very fearful of Lake. And one of his friends from San Diego, from where they were from, actually came up with them. And they, even the husband and his friend had guns. I mean, this is how fearful they were of Lake.
Wow.
And the husband and his friend were killed, and then Brenda was taken captive. For people who know the case, she was actually one of the ones taped in the chair.
Oh
Um,
yeah, the videotape.
mhm. um, Now her husband and the friend were found. Actually, law enforcement brought us to their burial site. Do you
So
remember?
that's where they found him, where they took us?
That was the husband and the friend. Yeah, that was
Okay.
Lonnie and his friend were there. That's where law enforcement took us. Yeah, that's where they were found. And now they were found initially. This is back in the early 80s when the case broke, but
Mhm.
Brenda and the baby were never found. But they found, the 48 pounds of bones when they did the excavation back then. And Reggie was just identified, and now Brenda has just been identified with some of those remains.
Through DNA?
Hmm. Yeah,
Wow.
it's
So
not known yet. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be telling anybody, but yeah. And there's a
well,
lot
it's gonna come out very
It
soon.
is. If it's not even gonna, break
When did they discover this?
this week.
This week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
Does Ing know?
Ing does not know yet. We do have Ing's reaction to Reggie on tape.
How was that?
Not good.
What did he say? I mean, how,
I mean, he was freaking out. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, he never thought these bodies were going to be identified. He just thought they were collected and that was going to be it.
I guess, yeah. I mean, because back then was, what year was it?
I mean, it's been 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, the DNA stuff didn't start popping until 2001.
Right. So, I mean, they've had the remains, but they haven't been tested. So he never thought any of these were going to get tested. He never thought, he'd have to worry about any of it. So it was a surprise when we told him. And he doesn't know about Brenda as of yet.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't understand what he thinks. I mean, he's in there forever.
Right. But I mean, it is an active case.
Mm-hmm.
So they could still charge him with more.
Yeah. I mean, what are they going to give him? Like another 100 years?
Yeah. I mean, they could. I mean,
it kind of rules out his resentencing that they're all talking about.
right.
That can kind of slam the door on that. Not that I don't think he'd ever get out on parole. I mean, but
Ever.
California, you never know.
Right. With everything Newsom is doing. I mean, Serial Killer X is up for resentencing.
He
And
is.
yeah. I mean, Norris was up for parole before he died too.
Yeah.
People don't
Well,
realize.
he had a different deal because he flipped on.
True. Yeah.
So on Bittaker, so he was able to. So he was under a different deal. He didn't have the death penalty.
Right. Right. But you'd be surprised how many of these guys do come up for parole, and sometimes it does get granted.
Cindy's friend that she went to college with, Nina. Remember we had her on?
Oh yeah.
That's one of the things that she specializes in. She goes to, because her Victims Rights United, I think it is.
Mhm.
They that's what she does. She sends people to their parole hearings to make sure they don't get out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times these parole hearings, they're just, if you don't know about them, they're just happening behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I think they notify some of the family members, but a lot of the family members don't go.
Right.
So she represents both them, the family members, and making sure these heinous criminals don't get out ever.
Right.
And I think that's, and I don't, and a lot of times these people, they slip through the cracks through the
No,
system.
they do. And I know for when Norris was up for parole, I mean, they did not notify the victims' families. So no one showed up.
Wow.
I mean, how is a family supposed to know unless they're keeping up with it? But
Exactly.
if there's nobody there to speak out on the victims' behalfs because no one was notified, I mean,
I thought they had to notify them.
I guess it depends on state.
I thought in California they had to. But I don't know. I have to check on that.
I don't know. Well, a lot of the family members were out of state as well. I don't know if it has to be within the state. I don't know. Every state is so different with that kind of stuff.
So with back to Ing and finding these news bones and identifying, what was the victim's name again?
Oh, Brenda.
So that means they probably are going to just waiting for DNA to identify more.
Yeah.
From that batch of bones. And were those the ones that were found near the house?
Correct. Yeah.
In the first excavation?
Yeah.
And he even said, Ing told you that there's more. They didn't get it all.
Oh, yeah.
There's another section of that area where that garage is.
Correct.
Next to the house.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, you were there. You saw how massive the land was. And I mean, it was a body farm.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Out of control. So how did you hear the news? Did Rob tell you?
Yeah. I can't say who told.
I'm sure. Yeah, I know. Probably he's got his there.
Yeah. They had asked about how our investigation is going with Ing and some other people on the case. And we've been keeping them updated with what we're doing. But there's a lot more victims about to be identified.
Has he given you any more information, or is it just kind of, you're still kind of working him?
Still working him.
Anything that kind of seeps through the cracks as
Well, he's been in a lot of trouble lately because of the assault. I don't know if we spoke about that
I don't
on.
think we have. What happened?
So he had apparently, I don't know. I mean, there's different versions of the story, but
I know there was an issue last time we spoke that we thought. I mean, we didn't put it on the podcast, but I remember we were talking about it, and you
right.
heard something through the grapevine through your sources that they were pulling him out.
Yeah. So he
Oh,
went to the hole for assault on a female correctional officer.
oh wow.
Yeah.
So how long was he in the hole for?
A couple weeks he was in there for.
So you had no contact with him while he was in there.
He did call while he was in there, and he called Rob as well. Um, but and, according to him, his version of the story is he just tapped her on the shoulder. Um,
Still,
yeah.
that's the
But the other inmates had told me, you can't go behind a correctional officer. That's completely against the rules for
yeah.
obvious reasons. And he had went up behind this female CO, and um, yeah. Now his version is he just tapped her on the shoulder, but
You're not supposed to touch him at all.
exactly.
So
And I don't know if there's. I heard there was going to be charges filed, like criminal charges of the assault, but I haven't heard anything since. He said it was going to be dropped, but who knows what's happening with that.
yeah. And then how is he faring amongst being in general pop, or is he still in the medical area?
No, he's back in the general population. He's doing pretty well. Nobody has really recognized him yet, though. There's only been like few people who are like, he looks familiar, but nobody has put the pieces together, or at least the inmates have not connected the dots of who he is. They do keep a lot of death row, at least in Vacaville, kind of together. They have a death row support group, which they actually call Serial Killers Anonymous is the nickname for the group.
Get out.
Yeah.
There's a friggin' show right there.
And it's the inmates who came up with the name. Yeah, Serial Killers Anonymous.
SKA.
Yeah,
How bizarre is that?
it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like you are their serial killers anonymous. They're the ones talking to you. The only thing you're not doing it is in a group.
Well, actually, I do. I have tapes, and Rob's been on the line before. They've called from all of the different prisons, and I
Oh,
put
they have at the
together.
same time.
Yeah, I have multiple tapes of it, and I'll tell Rob, I'm like, I'm running a serial killer hotline, because it's like they all get on the phone line and start talking. I do have them all recorded.
So they have so there'll be multiple ones on there,
Yeah,
and they're like exchanging and talking with each other as well
yeah,
as you.
yeah.
Oh, we got to hear some of that.
Oh, it's pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got to do an episode of that.
Oh, we should actually. Yeah, Rob calls it the serial killer party line. hmm
That's crazy.
It's really crazy. Yeah,
What are
it's all of them.
so get like who are some of the people that are usually get on that phone line?
Let's see. There's been Wesley Shermantine,
Mhm.
Chester Turner. Um, who else is there? From Donovan, there's been Wesley Shermantine, Chester Turner, Serial Killer X has even hopped on, Wayne Adam Ford, James Marlowe, who we've spoken about.
Yep.
Um, who else is there? Ing has been on there.
With other people, with her?
Yeah, Ing has even
Wow.
jumped in. Yeah. Um, I know it's crazy. Um, I'm forgetting like a bunch of them. Let's see.
That's
Chester
okay.
Sherman
What are
Time.
some of the things that they actually talk about?
Just the prisons that they're in.
Okay, so it's just kind of conditions, what they're doing, and just like daily shit.
Yeah, but it's also kind of mixed of like, does anybody know who you are? Have you been targeted? Type of thing.
Oh, okay.
Because now they're off to throw. They're back in general pop. It's more like, are you a target? Have you heard any stories or anything? And there was a murder with one of the serial killers. I forget which prison it was at. That was a big conversation between them. Because one had been murdered, and this is their biggest fear, is they're going to be targeted, they're going to be murdered. on mainline.
See, that's the weird thing. I mean, if you're at that level, it's so interesting that they fear death.
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
when you're that much, when you've taken that many lives and you've taken those risks and you're they've locked you up and thrown away the key. I mean, it's amazing that they even had the capacity to fear death at that point.
I feel like they fear it more than the average person too, from my talks with them.
Do you think that because they don't, they know what's happened, where they're going to go after
Yeah,
they die?
I think that's a big part of it. I
They
think well, I think when they're faced with death, just like Bittaker was, is, it starts to hit them like, what is on the other side for me?
exactly.
I mean, could you imagine? I can't even imagine just a normal person facing death. You start to think, what is on the other side? What's going to happen?
Hmm.
Knowing you've taken just one life, I can't even imagine when you've taken it multiple lives in the most heinous way, and now it's like, oh my god, what is on the other side? What's going to
I
happen?
know. I
That's
know.
be a very scary, revelation for all of them. And I've seen it firsthand with Bittaker, the way
Yeah, I
he,
know. I know. I can remember when we listen to his tapes as he gets closer to death. You
yeah,
can definitely hear it in his voice. You can his demeanor and the tone of
yeah,
his voice. He just sounds like a very weak person.
yeah,
And to me, it's like it's the ultimate cowardice.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you went through life raping and murdering innocent people, and now you have the gall to be afraid for your life.
for your life and what's next, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like that's ridiculous.
I know.
It's comical.
It is. And Kempo, when he was working with Ted Bundy, he was with Bundy in interviews, like face to face, like I was with Bittaker.
Hmm.
Read his reports of Bundy, it was almost identical to my experience with Bittaker. And he said the same thing. It was that same, like, how do you describe it? I mean, it was that realization is hitting, and you start to see it, you start to hear it in their tone, in the way they're speaking, and you just see this change and this fear come over them. And you can tell that all they're thinking about is what is next for them. And it's just a complete 180 from who they were, uh, prior to this realization that death is coming.
Cowards.
Hmm.
That's all that comes up. It's just like just such a cowardly way to be. It's like I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Can't imagine. But yeah, we definitely should maybe next week when you have to, if we have time, if you're not busy writing the book, we should definitely listen. I'd love to hear some of those tapes. I'm sure a lot of just a
Oh,
like
yeah.
crosstalk between a serial killer support group inside
Oh, we should.
prison. I
Should we
mean,
get? I could try to do a live one. Should we try to do a live one?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's see if we can do it. I
Yeah.
mean, because it's just just the fact, because I know when we talked about at San Quentin, that those the few of the guys used to get together all the time. Like Douglas Clark and Bittaker and whoever. I always forget his name. The Wolf,
Oh yeah, Marlowe.
Marlowe.
Yeah,
How's he holding up?
he's good. He is now down at, where is he? Oh, he went to Donovan.
Donovan.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's different though from all the rest though. I feel
He is. He's a very unique one.
you
He
know because
is.
I felt like a lot of his murders were motivated by drug fueled like
Yeah.
craziness.
Hmm.
I mean, because he definitely when we had him on, it seemed like I mean, he fully acknowledged what he did
Yeah.
and in detail and told us what he did and why he did it and you know and all that stuff. So he just seems like he was like in a drug filled rage or just and he did it that way.
Yeah.
He
He's
was he
definitely,
was for a murder. He was pretty honest about his sins.
yeah, which isn't typical of any of them.
No, no, no. But yeah, It's interesting that the whole thing about Ing now, though, too, with the, you know, I imagine they're probably going to come up with some more victims' names soon because they're in that DNA process now.
Yeah.
They're running all that
There's
stuff in.
more coming. Yeah. A lot more.
Yeah,
Um, I think what did they say? It's over 1,000 fragments. Um,
of bones.
yeah. And I mean, it's probably a lot of the same people, but I mean, they're estimating over 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they've only identified how many? Like
Two.
three?
Just
Two.
two right now. Brenda's gonna, yeah, the second one. Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Still a lot of people. And that's just and like I said, there's more bones underneath that area that Ing told you.
Right. So, I mean, there's still more out there
And
too.
they haven't excavated that.
Right. But
I
you
don't
gotta
know
think,
why. I don't know why the state just doesn't buy that property
I
or the
don't know how
county.
the guy is holding on to it that we met with.
Yeah, I don't know why he's holding it on either. If I had
It,
a property like that, I would like ask the county. It says, "You want to buy this? Just give me whatever money you can, and it's yours, and
right.
you can excavate it, do whatever you want." He was there was a creep factor there. Why would you want to own?
He had blood all over him when we met with him.
Yeah, what was that about?
Oh, I don't know. It's weird.
And the place is so dark and dank, and I can't
It
imagine being up there at night.
Remember I looked through the window and I said, "That looks exactly like the chair that he was sitting on doing
Yeah,
the
it
mass."
was. It was the room.
Yeah. Like, nothing on the inside is done. I mean, he doesn't even live there. See,
Did the police look underneath the house? Like, remember that section that was that crawl space that you and Cindy were like saw the locked
I
door?
don't know if they've searched under there, but,
I would think if the fact that they were just the fact that they were able to identify two sets of victims, that they would have a warrant to really kind of just go crazy on that property,
you would think, right? Yeah.
But I guess they're kind of doing it their own methodical way,
Yeah.
you know, because I don't know why that.
It is legalities, like, even when Rob and I were coming in to the case, there was a lot they couldn't really disclose to us because they said, "This is still an active investigation," but kind of pointing us in the right direction, it's
No, they were more cooperative than the homeowner.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I remember we showed up there the second day, and like the homeowner was like, he already had the sheriffs there, and he was more adamant. He was more pissed off at us than the sheriffs. They were like,
They
"Yeah,
wanted us to come in. They were like,
absolutely,
I was like, "Can you show us the dump sites?" They're like, "Yeah," you
yeah,
know, and
yeah."
that
They want to solve this.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like I'm sure it's a big albatross over there around their neck.
Right, right,
You
and
know.
all you have is Ing left.
Yep.
Mhm.
Oh, speaking of which, any more developments about the Hawaii victims?
Not yet. We're still I don't think oh, we haven't spoken about that, have we, on air? Well, I
I
guess
don't know. I think we talked a little bit about it,
a little
but
bit.
I know, yeah. But anyway,
Um, no, we're still looking into it. Um, but we have a few that we believe are the ones that, he's speaking about.
hmm
Yeah,
okay,
that thing.
crazy.
Yeah, victimology, MO, everything.
Yeah. So when was the last time you spoke to Aim?
A couple days ago.
How was his time in the hole?
I mean, it's the whole, solitary for
Yeah.
people. Oh, yeah. I mean, they have nothing. They're,
I
you
mean,
know,
the whole thing is solitary.
yeah, yeah. So they're stripped of everything that they have in a typical prison cell, which is, a TV. And with him, he loves his art supplies. So he's been very upset about his art supplies because they won't give him his art supplies from San Quentin at Vacaville.
How old is Ing now?
66, I want to
Okay.
say. Yeah, he's getting up there.
That's crazy.
I know.
Any status on the Ashton Kutcher guy? I can't remember his name.
The Ripper.
The Ripper.
What's his name? Oh, Gargiulo.
Gargiulo.
He's still awaiting trial, still in county. He's still causing hell there. I think I told you they keep putting him in the psych ward, then putting him back out in mainline. They don't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
That they didn't know what to do with him at San Quentin either. They were doing the
Yeah.
same thing at San Quentin. Yeah.
Just moving him around,
Mhm.
keeping him away from other people.
I did speak to his lead investigator out of Los Angeles, who's going to testify at the trial for Trish.
Mhm.
Yeah, they actually had, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this either, but they had two undercovers working undercovers in the prison with him. And they got a lot of information that way as well. So
They do that all the time.
yeah. Yeah. And then I handed over all the information that I got from my informants on death row that he was disclosing.
Okay, good.
Which is crazy. I mean, he's, confessing to the two undercover informants and then my informants on death row and saying, he has what was it? 9 bodies still that haven't been acquired. Now, he said this same information to the two undercovers and then my informants too, because when we compare notes, we're like, okay, it's the same number, same placement of where he's saying to the two informants plus my informants. Everything lined up.
Everything matches up.
Everything matches up, and it's just crazy. He's still out there saying, I'm innocent on his soapbox, trying to say
Yeah.
he's innocent. And they have even recorded, on tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But will they be able to, even though he's admitting to that, will they be able to even charge him? Do they have bodies?
No, that's the problem.
Yeah,
We find the
that's the
bodies.
problem.
Yeah.
There's no bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not giving specific names of people, is he?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So
Just locations. Right.
exactly, locations and stuff like that. So if they don't find anything, they really can't charge him with that, even though he's saying.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is how so many serial killers, when you look back into the cases and how a lot of them, you'll hear like, okay, they were only charged with, like Ing is only charged with 11. Bittaker was 5, but then you look at, the police discovery, they have the Knott's Berry, they have Gretchen, they have another, a slew of other girls, listed in the discovery, but he's only charged with 5. And it's because, if they don't have the bodies, a lot of DAs are scared to, charge somebody without having the body. It really
Yeah, they want slam dunks.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how many times that the prosecutor's office they want the path of least resistance for the prosecution. They don't want to do any work. They want to, I understand that, because it costs a lot of money, these trials, and a lot of time, and you don't want to walk out with an egg in your face when you have, especially someone like so dangerous like that. You want to make sure that this person is never going to get out.
Exactly. Exactly. I was just reading about, I think it was Robert Pickman. I don't know if anybody's familiar with his case. He was up in Canada, but he was the pig farmer. And he murdered, I mean, for years and years. And they found the bodies like on his property. And I was reading, I was surprised. I didn't know this. They only charged him with, I forgot the exact number, but it was very low. I think it was something like 2 or 3 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the bodies found there. But that happens. I mean, it happens more than people realize is if they only have, so much evidence to say, okay, well, we know he murdered this one, even with the bodies, sometimes they'll only go for the slam dunks, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know anything about Canadian law, but something tells me it's a lot not as stringent
Not as strict as us. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't even know if they don't have the death penalty up there. I don't think.
No, that was actually one of the reasons it took so long to get Ing actually back to America.
Because they didn't want to give him up because they knew the death penalty was here.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. I don't understand why, when you know that you have somebody like that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of death penalty after doing a bunch of documentaries on wrongful convictions because they make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But at the same point, when you have someone like that you absolutely 100% know,
No, yeah.
and that they're completely irredeemable.
Right. Right.
There's nothing else you can do. Just like you said, the serial killer X. I mean, he would do it exactly the same way as soon as he got out.
Yeah. I
They'd
mean,
figure out a way to do it.
same. He would, you
Yeah.
know? Hmm.
And he would probably do it in a way where he wouldn't get caught either this time.
Exactly. Yeah.
They would learn from their mistakes. Even if somebody was watching them, they're just too smart and cunning.
Right. And what's even scarier is you look at, Bittaker and Norris and you look at serial killer X. I mean, they were caught because they told somebody. And that happens a lot too. Is like they're so forensically savvy and they get away with it with law enforcement and forensics, but they make the mistake of telling somebody, which makes it even scarier because you think about, the ones that are out there and still out there who do the same thing, but they're not,
They're not
um,
bragging.
they're not bragging. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was like Gary Ridgway. He didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
He lasted for years.
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 Exactly.
But when he got caught, that's when he started bragging.
Well, yeah, that's when they can finally,
I still remember I had to go through. It was like, because they interviewed him because when he made a deal with them to kind of give up bodies, which he didn't really do.
Yeah.
But for I think it was like almost like a few months where they had him not in the prison, but they had him in a conference room, and they videotaped and recorded 8 hours a day for like a few months of him just telling him and it was just, I remember I had to go through all that, and it was just like, he was so matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
He was the real crazy one is when the investigator was saying, well, when you raped and killed them, and he says, I didn't rape them. He goes, I paid them for sex. He goes, but you never did pay them because you killed them. And
Yeah.
then he just the fact that in his logic was
I
the
was gonna
fact
say
that
their logic sometimes. It's really astounding. Yeah.
yeah,
Just like Bittaker and Norris, when you hear the tapes of him going, we didn't plan it because we took the girls in the moment, but they had planned it years in prison. And
sure, they were trolling, they were prepared for it.
right.
Just because they didn't plan for that day, it was like they were fishing. It was, oh, this is a
Right.
good flash. This is a good spot to fish.
Exactly.
We got our murder van. We got everything going. We got all our, everything we need. Let's
Right.
go. But we didn't plan it. Yeah, no, you plan it every day. You're prepared every day to do it.
Right.
Bizarro. It's amazing how the mind can really adapt
Right.
to craziness like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, how did they sleep?
I've asked that question before to them.
Do they have nightmares?
No,
They
because
don't have nightmares.
them all how they sleep at night, and every single one is reported like a baby. Nearly every single one.
Well, I guess some of them are on medication, though, aren't they?
Well, that is true. That is because they give them like horse tranquilizers at prison.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
but I'd be curious to see if they weren't on medication. If they're ones, do they all get that medication?
they try to. I mean, they really try to shove drugs down
Oh
them,
yeah,
especially at night when they're only at the staff is about half the size of typical.
yeah,
They do try to give them a ton of sleeping meds. But yeah, I would, that is a factor you got to put into there too. And, even when I'm doing an interview too, is I like to see what medications they're on, if that could, be a factor into why they're speaking, matter of factly, but typically it's not. It's typically, when they're talking about it, like you said, it's almost like they're reading a grocery list. It's like there's no emotion behind it. They're just doing it matter of factly, point by point of this is how I killed her. This is how I raped her. Just nothing there.
yeah. Have you ever had one that just breaks down in guilt?
Yeah, I mean, when I was pregnant, when I went to go spend those months I did Bittaker, Douglas Clark and Wayne Adam Ford. And I said to Ford broke down a few times. And I remember, with Clark and Bittaker, they always numbered the victims. And I see that a lot. They'll be like victim 1, victim 2, victim 3. Where with Ford, he would mention them by full name. And he always did. And he still does. I mean, he mentions them by their full name. And I always took note of that. I've mentioned it to him. But then actually one time Bittaker, unprompted out of nowhere, said to me, he goes, and it was almost like he was reading my mind. He goes, when I number them, he's like, and I've had a couple killers also make this remark to me, when I'm numbering them, it's only because I am trying to disassociate from the murders themselves and their names, because it's hard for me. And I've always taken that into account too, especially if they've made this remark to me, that they're different, kind of disassociating really from their crimes, but that's what they do it by not naming the victim. And I mean, this is the process they go through prior to the murders, is they'll disassociate from the victim themselves. They'll actually depersonalize the victim. And the mindset they get into, or what they have reported to me, is, it's no longer a person to them. It's almost like fishing. I mean,
Yeah,
how,
like
I don't know how
it's like
to describe
hunting
it.
an animal.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Gary Ridgway, he sent me a laundry list of his victims, and he had them numbered. If he had remembered their names, he would have their full names. Sometimes he'd have their first name. He'd also have descriptions of what they look like. He had a rating system,
Oh,
like a star if they were particularly pretty, or he really liked them. He liked the way they looked. It was pretty detailed.
that's
And
interesting.
yeah, yeah. And I think we put it in the documentary. But it was just, I remember when he sent it to me, because I was talking to him like probably once a week for like 4 months,
Yeah.
and because we had to have his participation, like
Right.
for the documentary. We had to. Fortunately, his older brother signed his release, because he had his power of attorney. But it's bizarre. It's just bizarre, and like the other thing I was talking to you about before is just like how these families that are still close to these killers, that they're connected to, some are very still connected to him. Like, they still, the Ridgway family, they still talk to him,
Yeah.
and and others like, Jen Carson, who her father was, a serial killer. She is thinking about talking to him again. And then you have BTK's daughter, who doesn't talk to him again,
Right.
doesn't want even anybody else talking to him. So it's bizarre. It's bizarre. It's so hard to wrap your head around, as far as just as a normal average person. It's like, where you don't even want to hurt an animal, and let alone this stuff happening.
I
But
know. It's really wild. I mean, when you really even think about, like, if I think about that all the time, I try to get into their headspace, especially when I'm doing the book, and look at my cat and I'm like trying to just imagine hurting an animal.
yeah,
And it's just so unfathomable. It's just like, how could, to get to that from to a human? I mean, how? It,
yeah,
it's wild. I mean,
yeah. Have you ever talked to either law enforcement or military that have been in combat, that have, because I have friends that were in Afghanistan and Iraq, and one of in particular friend of mine was a sniper,
yeah,
and that was his job, was to, he was a Marine Scout sniper, and his job every day was to pick out targets and eliminate. And some of them, he said, were, kids who were setting up IEDs, and he'd have to take them out. They were like 10, 12 years old. And it's like, he's a mess.
Oh, yeah.
He's a
Oh, yeah.
mess. He's never, and because um and he's still, I mean, he's been married like 6 times. He's got like kids from 6 different women. I mean, and he's the nicest person. He's the
Yeah.
most thoughtful. He's just mentally a mess. So I think when you see like that, that's what happens to the brain when you're normal, when you're doing like that. And then you have the serial killer side, which is they can sleep at night.
Right. Right. And yeah, they're not really thinking about it unless they're
No,
worried about it.
no. No,
Right.
I've told him because he still hasn't, and that's the thing where I was trying to encourage him to go do the ibogaine thing to kind of really get over that,
Yeah.
because that's such a huge method that a lot of you know um,
The soldiers. Yeah.
soldiers are using now to kind of get, because they can't get over that tape loop that's in their head
Yeah.
of the killings, because that's, to me, that's a normal reaction. You
Yeah.
have to be really super powerfully centered to be able to get through that and not carry it around with you, and be able to function.
I mean, that's the biggest thing is how do you, leave it at the job and not carry something
Yeah.
like that around? I
Yeah.
mean, that's yeah, I don't know how you would
To me, that's normal. That's a normal reaction. That's a body's normal reaction to
right.
taking a life, to have that. Granted, they're doing it justly. I mean, that's their job, and
Right.
if they didn't do it, then they would probably be killed because they're trying to kill them. But at the same point, you still got to be pretty
Yeah.
powerfully mentally to really kind of overcome that tape loop that you see in your head.
Oh, yeah. Completely.
Yeah,
Complete. Yeah.
it's fascinating. It'd be interesting to see the parallels between
That's
soldiers.
an interesting idea too, because, when Dr. White and I have been looking over, the 75 questions of the questionnaire, we want to give it to law enforcement and just common everyday people and measure the results between, the serial offenders, law enforcement. And that actually would be very interesting to have, men who have served in combat, who have, been put into a job where they've a role where they've, it's their job to kill. What their answers would be to measure those as well into it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like a baseline for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be very interesting. Very interesting.
Normal people under unusual circumstances where they're forced to kill.
Right.
It's part of their job, and how they process it versus a serial killer who is doing it as a compulsion and
Yeah.
fetish and enjoyment.
I was going to say for pleasure, for sport,
Yeah,
even. Yeah.
yeah,
That is interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. That would,
Bizarro. It's all bizarro.
it
I'm,
is.
I'm glad that you are able to do this work, because there's very few people doing this,
Yeah.
and I think you're,
See why.
well, yeah. I mean, but now it's like you're the fact that you're all in. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't. I mean, it's like the amount of data that you've accumulated.
Right. Right. And now it's finally, I think I'm excited it's about to come to the public. I think we're gonna,
Yeah,
publish
and
this study pretty soon.
yeah,
And the book is gonna be published and it's gonna be book one with Bittaker.
absolutely. I mean, and you have so many. I mean, with all these other stuff, I mean, you're going to be writing books for the
Oh,
next 10, 15 years.
yeah. And I'm excited to finally bring it to the public because I don't feel like, the toolbox killer really did anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was like a commercial.
It was a commercial. Yeah.
You know,
It really was. Yeah. So it's exciting that it's finally all gonna come out, like all the findings, all the research, the interviews.
that's always the challenging thing. When you do these true crime television documentaries, that it's like you're kind of forced into these time frames, and you have to get so much information packed into such a small package,
Yeah.
and there's always so much that's left on the cutting room floor, and sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you're fighting notes from multiple layers of people to get it approved. And sometimes to me, I always say to myself, it's like, my rough cut is my first shot to get my vision in.
Right.
I get my first rough cut, make it a little long, and then that's the story I wanted to tell. And like, and if they want to change it via notes and whatever it was, but and we're pretty successful at getting them to not diminish the message that we're trying to say.
Yeah.
But a lot of times people they're going for the ratings, they're going for the quick clicks. They just want to grab you. That's why it's really interesting that the only ones that you see, they keep on rehashing the Charles Manson and then the Ted Bundys and the BTKs, when I mean there are so many other heinous people out there
I know.
that have done way worse, and that are and that they go, well, we need
But
something.
never get told. And
Exactly.
after, because so many people message me, they're like, are you following this story or that story? All the ones that are big on TikTok or
Yeah.
Netflix or whatever. And I've told people, I'm like, don't even ask me about those cases because I don't typically follow them. Because after I did the Bittaker and Norris case, nobody knew who they were. Absolutely nobody even heard of the case. And
I didn't know about it.
nobody's heard about it, and so after I kind of brought, light to Cindy and Andrew, who are still up in the San Gabriel Mountains, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
from now on, I'm just going to focus on cases that haven't been brought to light.
Yeah.
So if I can focus on cases I feel like I need to focus on cases that need light,
Yeah.
not that everybody's following. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, I
We
kind of
get
want,
that. We get that too. Just for some of the cold cases. I mean, it's like we get a lot of, and we're thankful that we get a lot of cases that haven't been given a lot of attention, that are just heartbreaking, and that they're out there, and there's obvious, um, the people are still out there, the people that are doing it, and they're guilty, but they have they've slipped through the law. They
right,
slip through because bad police work sometimes, prosecutors who don't want to file charges because they don't have enough evidence.
right.
And we're dealing with right now with a couple things, a couple cases that we're following. The Molly and Colt case out of Oklahoma. We have two cases in Oklahoma right now that
Yeah,
are unsolved still. I mean, one we've been working for almost 8 years, and then another one we just kind of started looking into, the Noah Presco case, which, and now we're really kind of diving deep into it.
yeah,
But it's still, I mean, we don't know if it's gonna, police haven't really they didn't do their job,
yeah.
and it's not like they're still kind of trying to fit it into a category of possible hit and run. So it's strange.
I know it's hard because you're, putting everything into it and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and you only can do so much.
Right,
All you can do is kind of keep it in the limelight, and keep, hopefully, the social media pressure and stuff like that will
right.
help continue it and make sure it continues to have an audience. Like
Yeah,
all these cases, people, they have you know some of them follow them for the right reasons. Some of them follow it because they want to discuss it and debate it online.
yep.
Those are always crazy.
Mhm.
But
There is a case I might be bringing to you and Cindy and the podcast, possibly. Um, I'll see. I'm still kind of looking into it right now.
okay.
It might be an innocent case, which I've never done before. This is a brand new experience
Wow.
for me. But you and Cindy have gotten
We've
uh,
gotten people out of prison. Yeah.
right. I mean, they were on death row, weren't they too?
None of them are on death row, but there are the program that we followed at Georgetown. They have, I think, gotten people's, at least stay of execution or a retrial.
Yeah,
I mean, we did that with Georgetown in 2018. It was the first class that they did that we followed
yeah,
with undergraduate students, basically re-examining murder cases,
yeah.
and they have an incredible record now. I mean, they're still. It's like they do. I just saw they did a graduation of someday. I think they may have gotten someone else out,
Oh,
but
wow.
the work that Cindy's classmates from high school um, started at Georgetown, and it's like every year there's a new group of students. They do it once a year, like every January semester,
Oh, wow.
and they're very successful at it. So yeah, if there's you have something,
I might,
that-
yeah, reach out to them.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm still looking into it, but it's the first one in 11 years that I've been, in the prison. Um,
Someone you've been talking to that you think is innocent.
yeah, well, the serial killers brought this one to me.
Oh
Usually they
wow.
bring me other serial killers, but they were like, no, this guy is innocent. And I was like, well, this is a first in 11 years. Never have ever had a guy brought to me that they believe is innocent. And I've been doing a lot of digging into the case, and it's very compelling. So, I still have a lot to look into, but I might bring it to you guys and might bring
Okay,
it
cool.
to the podcast. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
All right, Laura. Thank you so much. Let's work on the Serial Killers Anonymous episode. Let's see if we can make that work. And if you can't get them all together, we can just kind of listen to some recordings. I mean, but to do it live, that would be
Would
amazing.
you guys I guess I'll ask the viewers, would you guys like a pre-recorded episode of them, or do you guys want to hear them live?
Oh, I think they all want it live.
Do you guys want it put it in the comments if you guys want
Put
it
in the comments. I vote for live.
Okay. Yeah, let us know, and if you guys want it live, we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Laura.
All right.
Great seeing you again.
You too. I'll see you guys next week, and yeah.
Yes, definitely.